I meant my hand.
What's going on, guys? Hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I wanted to talk about deleted scenes, specifically the top 10 deleted scenes that got cut from the Jurassic Park movies that I personally think are the most important and interesting to the franchise. Ever since Jurassic World Dominion got an extended cut, there's been a ton of fans wondering if we'd ever see longer versions of the other films, and while I don't know if that will ever happen, these are scenes that I've done videos on separately before in the past, but also scenes that I think would have made for seriously cool material for fans to talk about in the finished movies themselves. Deleted dinosaur kills, important character moments, exposition that affects the lore, and even longer attacks. These are the scenes that I think rank the highest when it comes to cut content from the movies. So before I go into the actual list, I want to talk about an honorable mention, which is Kelly in The Lost World talking to Ian Malcolm about her wanting him to marry Sarah Harding. The Lost World Jurassic Park, I still think, is one of the better Jurassic Park sequels. It's my personal favorite, but I will admit that it is a little low on character development, and this would have actually tied in the family relationship with the humans to that of the Tyrannosaurs in the movie. So it would have been something that actually added depth to the film. And by the time the film ends, you kind of are left with, oh look, Ian and Sarah might actually be together. But yeah, they cut it from the movie, and that's kind of a bummer. But starting off at number 10 for the official list, I want to talk about Ajay's death scene in The Lost World. Now, the famous "don't go into the long grass" scene had a couple of things cut from it that are in the actual script. They're in comic book form, and there's even still images released of very bloodied raptors, and Ajay kind of left alone in the grass while all this stuff is going on. We hear him scream while Ian Malcolm and the others are running through the grass. He does get killed because that's why Roland Timbo ends up leaving Isla Sorna kind of bummed out. But yeah, there is some stuff in the long grass that was not shown to the public. I don't know exactly how much there is because unfortunately this was part of the original trilogy, which means we may never get to see these scenes. I'll explain why later, but this was something that I've always wanted to see. This is actual stuff on set of bloodied raptor maws coming out of the long grass. Just imagine what that would have been like. It sounds like it is just perfect for Lost World. Coming in at number 9 is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom's Stegosaurus carcass scene. Now, there was a lot of material cut from this movie, but this particular scene happened to be Owen Grady and Wheatley's team coming across a large stegosaur carcass that was kind of left somewhere near the way to Blue. Now, they built this massive prop for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. In fact, it was ADI, which you probably know from some of the Alien movies and other things before in the past that have to do with monster films. And I don't know why the stegosaurs in the Jurassic Park franchise are so gigantic, but yeah, this one was really, really big, and Owen was supposed to come across it with everyone else, and it's just an added scene where you see that a lot of the life on Nublar has started dying now that the park is no longer operational. I just think it would be cool, it's just a carcass, there's nothing pretty serious about it, but it would have padded out the runtime on the island in Fallen Kingdom a bit better. Number 8, once again, coming back to the Lost World Jurassic Park, we're going to talk about the InGen boardroom scene. Now, if you've seen the TV versions for this movie, you've more than likely seen the scene before in the past. It basically just has Peter Ludlow going over the casualties from the original Jurassic Park, how much money the company is bleeding, and the fact that Kathy got attacked by a Compsognathus at the beginning of the film. He basically uses this to climb the corporate ladder and take power away from John Hammond so that he can start rounding up dinosaurs for the theme park on the mainland. It's a good little scene, although it is very silly in retrospect. At the time, they were working with the idea that Nublar was devoid of life and all the dinosaurs died, but for some reason, the dinosaurs on Sorna adapted. I have no idea why the lysine contingency didn't go into effect over there, even though you'd think it would be the same thing. But anyways, it's probably for the best that they cut this scene because we don't technically need it, but it is something that is pretty fun that I'd like to see repurposed if they wanted to do a prequel or something in the future. Number 7, Gambler's Ruin and the espionage sequence. So there are a lot of little pieces of scenery cut out of this specific part of the Lost World Jurassic Park. In the script, Ian Malcolm talks about Gambler's Ruin, which is something Michael Klayton listed in the second book about everything going to hell in streaks. It's basically just advice that what you guys are doing here, sabotaging the hunter camp, is a bad idea. He takes Kelly and leaves. Eddie Carr goes with him. And then for the most part, everything you have going on here with Sarah and Nick is just further explanations as to how the hunter camp was just fell into chaos so quickly. Nick Van Owen actually cuts the fuel lines of several of the vehicles, which is why when they explode, they kind of launch into the air and get really, really crazy. It's a fun scene that I wish was included, but again, it's a part of the original trilogy, so I'm not really holding out hope that it'll ever get released. Again, I'll tell you why in a little while. Number 6, Jurassic Park 3's Udesky fighting back against the Raptors. Now, I included this in a previous video on top 5 deleted scenes we never got to see. That's because this is basically something that we only have still images of. We do not have footage of this scene. When Udesky came across the Velociraptors and everyone else went up in the trees, he was supposed to grab a stick and kind of swing it back. We just cut away in the final film. We don't really see how he got knocked to the ground, but yeah, that's because he tried to actually stop them from killing him. It probably wouldn't be very long. I'm guessing just a few additional seconds of footage, but it goes a long way, and this still image actually presents something of interest to a lot of fans because Jurassic Park 3 is so fast anyways, adding anything back into the movie would make it just a little bit longer. It still wouldn't be 2 hours, so just throw stuff like that back in if you have access to it. Number 5, the Triceratops sickness gets explained. So in the original Jurassic Park, they have this scene where they say that the West Indian lilac berries are toxic, but Jerry Harding knows that the animals don't eat them. This is kind of weird because the Triceratops is sick, it happens periodically, and there's never really any moment where they specifically explain what's going on. Well, they did film the revelation of the animal actually taking time to eat stones. Now, these stones are what it would use to actually grind up the material, and it only ate them every once in a while. This is something that birds do, and dinosaurs are expected to do the same thing. And the reason that he didn't think that the dinosaurs ate the West Indian lilac berries was because they weren't trying to. They're just trying to eat the stones every once in a while so that they can eat their other foliage. And yeah, this was something that probably should have been included in the final cut. It is a cool little scene. Additional material of Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, and Tim is on the cutting room floor. I don't think we're ever gonna get to see this stuff released though either. So here's the thing about the first trilogy, guys. A long time ago in the late 2000s, there was a fire that raged through Universal Studios, and from my understanding, it destroyed a lot of the old deleted scenes and stuff that they kept on file for the company. I don't know if they were all totally destroyed. Maybe they all survived, but from what I understand, there were a lot of master tapes for even Universal Music that were destroyed in that fire. This was a very big deal when it happened, and a lot of people suggest the reason we've never seen director's cuts of the older movies is because of this unfortunate incident. Now, it's not to say Steven Spielberg might have all these deleted scenes in his closet somewhere at home. I kind of doubt it, but yeah, think about it. When have you ever seen additional material released for the first 3 Jurassic Park movies? You just haven't. Fallen Kingdom and the first Jurassic World are still on the table for director's cuts. I think that'd be cool, but yeah, I always wanted a Lost World one, and I just have a lot of doubts about that. Speaking of which, number 4, the Indoraptor with the human skull scene. Now, this one we may actually get to see in the future. So early on in the movie, Eli Mills is with Gunnar Eversole, showing him around the Lockwood Manor, and he comes to the Indoraptor, which is in the cage in the film, and they explain that the Indoraptor actually killed someone, and nobody wants to go in there and get the body out because it's the Indoraptor. I mean, come on. But it lured him in there by having the light kind of destroyed, so someone would go in there and try to switch out the light, and they got killed. Now, this is how the people running the Lockwood Manor figured out that it takes 3 tranquilizer darts to stop the Indoraptor and knock it out. And in the movie, this was actually all supposed to be set up to Ken Wheatley's death scene in a very Robert Muldoon sort of way. Ken Wheatley only shoots the Indoraptor twice. That's the same amount of tranks, I believe, that was used to knock out Blue. So when the Indoraptor pretends to be asleep, it's all kind of like a big, oh, he's gonna kill him kind of moment. Now, I actually understand why this scene was cut because it doesn't really make logical sense chance for bullets to not pierce the animal's skin, but somehow a little tranquilizer needle can get through it. I get the point of it needing 3, like only a certain amount of tranquilizer fluid would go in the animal per dart, so that's why you needed so much of it, because the skin is so tough. But yeah, I can actually understand why they cut this out of the movie, although if it was added back in, it would add to the darker tone, and it would probably help people like understand what's going on with that whole Ken Wheatley death scene. Either way, I don't really mind, to be honest with you. But number 3 is where we get really cool. Roland Timbo in Mombasa. You've probably seen this before. It's basically a bar fight. Early in the movie, before Roland Timbo gives his big speech on Isla Sorna, they were supposed to introduce the character in a bar where he meets up with Ajay, who convinces him to go to Site B and kill a Tyrannosaurus. Now, this whole scene is basically just Roland showing us that he's kind of a big deal and he's going to be the head honcho in the film for the Hunter team. It's actually really fun, really clever, very 90s action movie, and I would go as far to say that the humor here is some of the best in the franchise. But unfortunately it went unused. You probably have seen it before in the TV version, and this is one of the few deleted scenes that has actually been released from the first 3 movies that we can all see specifically. Number 2, again from Fallen Kingdom, one that I would love to see finished and recut into the film because I think it needs it, is Iris's death scene. So this was a scene that I really hate the fact that we never got. When Maisie runs away from the Indoraptor in the Lockwood Manor, she runs up the stairs, and from what it looks like, Iris was actually supposed to jump in front of her and in between the Indoraptor and try to stop it from killing her. Now, of course, this leads to the Indoraptor killing Iris. They did film this. This was in an early cut of the movie, from my understanding, and I've actually read a portion of the screenplay that takes place after this. Iris didn't die immediately. I don't know how the Indoraptor was going to get her out of the way, but she was dying after that when Claire kind of limps over to her and talks to her about Maisie. As Iris is dying, she was supposed to give Claire like this book that basically, it's the book Lockwood has in the movie. It basically reveals that, she's a clone and stuff like that, which was way better than the clone reveal that they did in the final cut because it was so like in your face, like the audience was stupid or something. But yeah, I just, even if they don't add that scene in where Claire's limping over, they should have had the scene where Iris dies because she just disappears from the movie, kind of similar to Vince Vaughn in The Lost World. Why is he not in the 3rd act? I don't know. But yeah, this is something that I really think should have been included in the final cut, and it actually is something that we may get to see one day. I really hope that ILM finalizes the special effects, puts out a director's cut of Fallen Kingdom. I think it could be really cool, but number 1, this is one we'll never get to see. At least I don't think so, unless Steven Spielberg pulls it out of his basement one day. This is probably one of the most important scenes for the 2nd Jurassic Park movie, and it actually sets up the villain's death in a really cool way. Peter Ludlow breaks the baby T-Rex's leg. Now, you've probably seen this still image before in the past, but none of us have really seen it. I know some people claim to, but I never have. This was basically a scene where Roland Timbo and Peter Ludlow are just talking about philosophy and how they think about hunting dinosaurs and the ethics of cloning and stuff like that. And meanwhile, while this is all going on, some sort of animal scares Peter Ludlow, who's drunk, by the way. It causes him to trip, and he falls on the baby T-Rex's leg, breaking it, making the baby scream out in pain, and he gets up like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna go do my conference call. It really makes Roland Timbo angry because he had no intention of hurting the animal. He's just using it as bait to kill the buck. And yeah, it was a pretty big scene because it ties into the end of the movie where, if you remember how he dies, Peter Ludlow tries to escape the buck and infant Tyrannosaur, and how does the T-Rex stop him? It breaks his leg. Kind of like poetic justice revenge, and then it drops him in front of the baby so that the baby can finish the job and kill him off. Now, this is a deleted scene that, from my understanding, David kept. I think this is the one that he was the most disappointed to see go, and I understand completely because that sort of comeuppance, it's in there for characters like Dieter Stark, it's in there for characters even like Robert Muldoon, even though he's not a bad guy, but he was a raptor guy, so to get outsmarted by raptors was cool. I really wish this was in The Lost World, and I would love a director's cut of that movie so bad. I'd love for them to to add anything back into Jurassic Park 3, just make it slightly longer. But yeah, this one was always the one that I think people were the most interested in seeing, and unfortunately, I just don't see that happening anytime in the future. Anyways, guys, these are all just my own thoughts and opinions on the top 10 deleted scenes from the Jurassic Park movies. I've already covered the top 5 that we never got to see, but this goes into detail about some that are very popular, some that you may have heard a little bit of information on, and some that I think do deserve to be put back into the movies and that we may actually get to see someday. But yeah, that's what I have to say about the subject matter. I've talked long enough. What I'd like to know is, what is your favorite deleted scene from this material? Or is it one that I didn't include on the list? Personally, like I said, Ludlow breaking the baby T-Rex's leg and Iris's death scene, they should really be put back into the movies if they can be. But whatever your own thoughts and opinions happen to be, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. Now before I go, I'd like to thank all of my game wardens and InGen executives, as well as all of my park workers and InGen hunters as well. You've all helped my channel immensely, and I'm incredibly grateful for all of that support. Now I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video and hope that you enjoyed the content. If you feel like I deserve it, I'd appreciate the like and hope that you all consider subscribing. I'll see you all in the next video, guys, and as always, take it easy.